All right, we're going to get started. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on this webinar. My name is Mary Brown, and I am the Director of Upper School Enrollment at Catlin Gables School. And that means that a big part of my job is to help families who are interested in pursuing admission to Catlin's upper school, which is high school, grades 9 through 12. So I work with families to help them learn about the school as well as go through the application for admission process. So again, thank you for being here. I want to remind you that this webinar is being recorded. And that you will have an opportunity to ask questions by type. You can type them in the chat. You don't have to, if you think of something that you're wondering about, you can type it in right away. We'll do the Q&A after I give a little bit of information. So we will get to your questions, I promise. All right, well, we'll get started. And a little bit, I already kind of talked a little bit about the agenda, but I will go through the process for applying for admission. And then after that, we'll just do a Q&A for any questions that people have. You can just type them into the chat. And questions can include questions about the financial aid application process, or some more technical questions about our admission portal and so forth. So please feel free to ask those types of questions as well. And here's a little screenshot of some of my colleagues. If you have not met them, I am in the upper left corner. My colleague, Mary Jacob, another Mary, is in the bottom left corner, and she's the Director of Financial Assistance. Quinlan Wright is in the upper right corner, and she is the enrollment coordinator. So she will be helping in terms of upper school with shadow days and upper school tours and things like that. And then in the bottom right corner is my colleague Maribeth Pasanante, and she is our go-to for any kind of questions regarding the online application. So there's lots of different ways to learn about Catlin Gable, and families who are thinking about applying or have already begun the application process come into the process with a variety of different levels of knowledge and information. And so these are lots of really lovely optional things. And if you feel like you have what you need, then you can opt out of some of these. A helpful event is coming up this Sunday, October 27th. That's our annual open house. It's from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. And what's helpful about the open house is that all of our teachers are here, and they will give kind of short presentations about their department, and then they will open it up for questions. So it's a really fantastic opportunity to meet our teachers, to hear what they have to say about their department and about their goals for students, and then also just to ask questions of them. It's probably one of the few opportunities that you can engage directly with teachers as you're going through this admission process. We'll also have a really awesome upper school sort of resource room that'll be in the upper school library, and that'll have tables with students and grown-ups representing athletics and upper school clubs and activities. The global ed department will have a table, the college counseling department will have a table, outdoor education, our learning specialists will have a table, our counselors. So lots of different folks to just chat with or hear about all the ways that we provide opportunities for upper school students as well as support for them. So that's this Sunday from 1 to 4. And then I'll talk a little bit about the Palma Scholars Program a little bit later, but for those who are interested in learning more about that program, and it is open to those applying to 9th grade. And we'll have a breakfast that will provide lots of great information on December 3rd, and that's at the MAC, the Multnomah Athletic Club. We also have some upper school information sessions, one on December 11th and another one on January 15th, and those are in the evening. And there you'll hear from the upper school leadership as well as some students who will sit on a panel. And typically most of those panelists are kids who are new to the upper school in 9th or 10th grade, so they can really speak to the transition. And then we also offer many private or individual tours of the campus, and those are during just a regular typical school day, and they're led by two upper school students. They take about 45 minutes. They'll pop into a couple different classes and sessions, so you get to see what that looks like. And then it's followed by time with me at the end if you have any questions for me. So like I said, we offer those throughout various times of the day, various days of the week over the coming months. So hopefully you can find a time that works for you on that. And then the shadow day is a day that if your child is planning to complete the application process and they are local, meaning they're in the Portland metro area, it is something that we do require. If you don't live locally, then we will have another option for you over Zoom. But if you are a local, the shadow day is a time where applicants will come on a designated day that they choose. And they'll have a host who will take them with them to a couple of their classes. And then we have a couple of activities that we do with just the visitors. And then, of course, the visitor will go to lunch and breaks and so forth as well with their host. So that's a really great day for an applicant to get kind of what's the vibe at Catlin? How do the students treat each other? How do they behave in classrooms? How do they engage with their teachers? What do they do when it's free time or their lunch break and so forth? So that part of the process can take place at any point in the application process. So I encourage people to do it sort of early in the process because it can serve as a really great motivator for your child. If they have a great day here, then it'll be easier to get them to finish the other steps of the application. Or on the rare occasion where it doesn't seem like it's the right fit for them, then perhaps they can decide not to finish the application process and you can kind of cut your losses. So I definitely think it's a good idea to do it early in the process if possible. And then we're always, I'm always happy to connect any applicant family with a Catlin Gable coach or a Catlin Gable parent or an alum. So if there's somebody that you think of would be helpful to chat with, please reach out to me. Happy to make that connection. And then the last thing I'd suggest is if your child is really interested in athletics or maybe the theater or music, that you consider attending a Catlin Gable event just to, again, kind of see how our kids perform and see what those are all about. So lots of lovely ways to learn about the school, and all of them are optional with the exception of the shadow day if you're local. Just to give you a little sense of the applications, this is a 5-year average. You can read the chart, but typically we aim for around 100 applications for 9th grade, and we typically enroll between 25 and 30 new students each year. So these averages kind of hit that right there. And then for the other grades in the upper school, 10th, 11th, and 12th, we have fewer new students, but you can also see that we have fewer applications as well. So we typically every year enroll some students in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, just smaller numbers. And this is a little bit about the application timeline. There's a lot of information in here. I hope it's not too overwhelming. The beauty is you have a couple months to complete the process. So if you're applying to the upper school, whether it's 9th grade or anywhere through 12th grade, you'll want to work back from the application deadline, which is February 4th. If you're applying for financial aid, that's the same deadline, February 4th. And so, like I said, you have a couple of months to finish all the steps in the process. If you are applying for the Palma Scholars Program, that has a slightly earlier deadline. And I'll talk a little bit about sort of the differences in terms of the application process in a bit. But that application deadline is January 16th. So a couple weeks before the general upper school deadline. And so, now is the time that people are attending open houses, that they're scheduling a tour of the campus or scheduling a shadow day. And then you've got a little time to do some of the application steps in terms of answering some questions and so on and so forth. And I'll go through more of the steps in a minute, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a visual of the process. I was going to mention one other thing. Oh, yes. If you do, if you want to save a little money, you can pay the application fee by December 19th, and then there's a 50% discount on the application fee. So consider that as well. Okay, now I'm going to chat briefly about the various steps in the application process with the goal of making them feel much more doable, because I can imagine that it could feel a little bit overwhelming with all the steps. So there is a set of kind of short responses required for the applicant or for the student. You see there's a 150 word limit on those. So there's some questions for the students, and then we also ask for the student to produce a video, and we intentionally make it vague. We say, just tell us whatever you'd like to tell us about yourself that maybe wasn't included in the application. And I definitely want to emphasize that it should not be something that's stressful for the student to create. It shouldn't feel like it needs to be Hollywood produced. There's no judgment about sort of the quality or really even the content of the video. It's just a piece of the application to help us kind of feel like we are getting to know your child. And sometimes it just serves as a lovely reminder. So we'll have met your child at the shadow day, and maybe that was a few months before the February 4th application deadline. And then we'll start to read files, and then we'll watch the video, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that student, and so forth. So that's what the video is all about. There's also a set of questions for parents that have a 250 word limit, and we do ask you abide by that limit. The writing sample is a paper that your child has written for school, and it doesn't have to be for an English class. It could be for any class. Ideally, it's a paper that they've written in for the current school year, and if that's just not available, you could think back on the year prior. And there's instructions on how to upload that paper, and ideally it's a graded paper. And I recognize nowadays that sometimes the comments and the grades come separately or electronically for students. And so if there's a way you can submit a screenshot or submit the comments separately, that's absolutely fine as well. I talked a little bit about the shadow day. That's the day where your child will come to campus and go to some classes with a host and do a few fun activities with the other visitors. We usually aim for about a dozen visitors at one time, and so they will come with they will be part of a group of visitors on their shadow day. Prior to the shadow day, we ask that you fill out the interests and shadow day form, and that's for your child to fill out. It probably will only take a couple minutes to fill out, and it really just provides us with some information about your child in terms of their interests and what they like to do outside of school, as well as what subjects they enjoy and maybe would like to see on their shadow day. So we use that information in finding a host for your child that's suitable. So, so that we ask that you fill out ahead of time. And then I kind of described the activities as well as the things that your child will do on their shadow day. And then we also ask for teacher evaluation forms, or sometimes they're called teacher recs, right? So we ask for them for upper school from the child's current English teacher, their current math teacher, and their current science teacher. And we do ask, we recognize that maybe last year's teacher might know your child a little bit better, but we do ask that it's for this year, just because kids grow and change so much. There's no benefit to getting those in earlier, or even to completing the application process earlier. So my advice to families is to talk with each of those teachers, make sure you have their correct email address, ask them if they would be willing to complete this form. I think it's helpful to clarify that it's not a letter of recommendation that they have to write, because sometimes that can feel like a lot of work. But actually it's a form that they're responding to some questions and some prompts. Uninterrupted, that form will take probably 10 minutes to complete. So that's sometimes helpful information that you might want to pass along to the teacher as you're asking. And then work back from the application deadline. So if you're applying for just regular admission, you could say, oh, it's due no later than February 4th. It should only take you about 10 minutes to do it. When is a good time for me to send that form to you electronically? So hopefully, hopefully they could find some time in January, or maybe right before the winter break. And then school records are also a part of the application. So whatever is available this year, every school has kind of a different schedule. And so often school records are available for this current year in January. But you'll just want to check with your school to find out when they're available. And then for the last 2 years as well. So, and there is instructions on the application on how you can upload your copies of those. So those are the pieces of the application. And then for the Palma Scholars Program, again, that's for anybody who's interested in applying, anybody who would be applying for 9th grade, who's interested in the program. We have tons of information about the program on our website. And it's essentially the application for upper school with 2 things that are in addition, and I highlighted them in purple here. There's what we call the Palma Addendum, which is just a couple of additional questions for the applicant, as well as a place to provide information about any community service that they've done. And then because applicants need to be high-performing athletes, we also require, in addition to the 3 teacher rec forms, we require a rec form from a coach that is one of their main coaches in a sport that they do. So just 2 additional pieces of information to apply for the Palma Scholars Program, and then of course keep in mind the earlier application deadline for that in January. And then this is just sort of a visual of what that checklist looks like in your admission portal. And I show it not so that you can, get all these details, because we just talked about them, but more that you'll see. This is just a live example where you'll see that green check mark on the left when you've completed a step in the process. So that's what that looks like. And then just really quickly, because I want to give you plenty of time to ask questions, but sometimes it's kind of mysterious how admission decisions are made. And so I'm just going to briefly go through this. There's a committee that makes these decisions, and it's made up of, for the upper school committee, it's made up of upper school faculty members and staff members. And those committee members will observe and engage with the applicants on their shadow days. And then after the application deadline, they review the applications, and then we come together as a committee to discuss all the applicants. And we look for a student who shows evidence of just being successful at Catlin academically and socially and so forth. We look for evidence of a student who will hopefully happily take advantage of lots of the really wonderful opportunities opportunities that are available to students in the upper school. And then the reality is that we have limited financial aid. I feel like we have a generous financial aid budget, but it does have some limits. So sometimes decisions need to be made in terms of, just having limited financial aid. We do take a look at families who have a relationship with the school, whether a parent was an alum, whether they also have, or they have other children at the school currently, or if they're an employee of the school. Those affiliations don't trump everything else, but it's something that we absolutely consider. And then on March 7th is when we email our admission decisions to every applicant family. And there's 3 different decisions, and you'll receive one of them. One could be an offer of admission, and you'll have some opportunities to return to campus to help celebrate with us, to ask any final questions, and you'll have typically a week and a half to make that decision of whether you want to accept our offer of admission. And if you do accept, then you will put down a deposit to save your spot in the class. And that gets the ball rolling in other ways. The second decision is an invitation to be part of our wait pool. Some schools might call it a wait list. We call it a wait pool because it's not a ranked list. And then if a spot opens up at any point from that March 7th date all the way up until school starts, if a spot opens up, then we will look to the wait pool and make an offer to someone. And then the hardest decision is the decision of not being able to offer somebody a spot in the class or on the wait pool. And we also know that kids really grow and change a ton. And so we absolutely welcome families to consider applying in the future, even if if the current year did not work out for them. All right. So that's it for my information. And just please, if you have questions, type them in the chat. And then I'll just remind you, like, if you have a really specific question about your family situation or your child, I'm very available via email. We could set up a time to connect over Zoom or live. So these questions probably will be most helpful if they're a little bit more general. And my colleague, Sarah Nordoff, is going to help me out with some of those questions.
Everyone. All right, Mary, you ready?
I'm ready.
Hey. First question is family wondering if we use the SSAT as a part of our application process.
Oh yeah, and I am going to stop the sharing there. We don't use we don't require an admission test. The SSAT was one that was quite popular that we did use for a long time, and then decided to. We've been thinking about it for a while and kind of following news from colleges that have made the SAT and ACT tests more optional for students. And then the pandemic hit. And so that's when we decided to press pause on requiring any admission tests. So that's a long answer to nope, we don't. And if you've taken, it's a good question to ask any school that you're applying to, because some schools are continuing to require admission tests. So if you do take the SSAT or the HSPT or any of the tests that schools require for another school, we ask that you not send it to Catlin, the results, because we want it to be an equitable process for all the applicants.
Great, thanks, Mary. This question is about the teacher recommendations. This family's wondering or noting that the ones that we asked for seem like they're from fairly specific subject matter areas. And what if you have a student who excels in other areas, like the arts or a language? Could a teacher submit on behalf of the student who teaches in those subject areas?
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad this question came up because I should have mentioned it. So we do require the teacher rec forms from math and English and science. And we have an optional rec form that I believe is right there in your checklist as well. And it should say optional so that that's clear. And that is for, it can be for like a music teacher or maybe an art teacher of sorts, like a visual arts teacher. Or it could be for, you know, a private individual that who gives you lessons in some sort or gives your child lessons. So there is the optional form that is available for some adult outside of the 3 subject areas that we require.
Great, thanks, Mary. This next question is about reapplicants. If you are a reapplicant, and if you would like to have your application fee waived, do you have to submit everything by the December 19th deadline?
So if you are, and colleagues, feel free to correct me if I'm not remembering this accurately, but if you are reapplying, so if you've applied to Catlin Gable in the past and you're reapplying this year, your application fee is waived and there's no sort of deadline for that, I believe. So it will be waived. And just as long as we're talking about that, the December, I think we call it an early Eagle deadline, or yeah, deadline. If you want to have a 50% discount on the application fee, you don't have to complete the entire application by then. You simply have to pay the application fee by then. Sometimes that's confusing for people, so.
Just one little piece of clarification on the application fee waiver. Go ahead and add your new application for 2025-26, and then there's a link to request the fee waiver, but you have to add the application first.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. So there's something that leads you to requesting the waiver, it sounds like. Great. Thanks, Mary.
Okay. Mary, what about candidates that are applying from overseas? Are there aspects of the process that are different from them if they're not able to get here on campus quickly?
Yes, every year we have applications from folks who live overseas and abroad, and we don't require the in-person shadow day. If they happen to be in Portland on a date that's sort of outside of the shadow days we offer, if school's in session, we can have the student do just a special shadow day. If they're not planning on being in Portland, I offer a virtual tour. So we'll just schedule a time that works for both time zones, and we meet over Zoom. And I will share the screen and show some photos of the various learning places throughout the upper school. And it's super casual. So, you know, as questions come up, we just chat about whatever questions they have. So that's optional, just like the in-person tours are optional. And then in lieu of a shadow day, if they're not going to be in town at all, we do a kind of a casual interview with the applicant that we would again set up at a time that works for everyone. So we essentially waive the in-person shadow day and instead have a Zoom interview.
Awesome. And then Mary, what about siblings? How do we handle applications from families that have 2 kids applying, 2 or more kids applying?
Yeah, so not siblings who are current Catlin Gable students, but more that a family is applying to 2 for 2 of their children, 2 or more. Yeah. So we do look at each individual applicant separately, right? Because kids are their own beautifully unique selves and make sort of that decision. But it is a really human process, and so we do know about siblings that are applying, and we talk about those things. We also, ahead of the decision making sort of period, we reach out to any family who has more than 1 child in the application pool. And we ask you, we recognize that sometimes receiving perhaps different admission decisions can be tricky in a family. So we ask you as the parent, what you would like. Do you want your children to have the same admission decision? Or are you okay with different admission decisions? So we get your feedback as well. But like I said, it is a really human process. And so we do think a lot about sort of the how tricky it can be for kids to either receive different admission decisions or attend different schools and so forth. Sometimes what just plays into it is how much space a grade level has as well. There are some grade levels where only a couple new students come and join the cohort, and then other grade levels where there's many more spaces. So sometimes it's just purely about that as well.
Mhm. Thank you. A follow-up question, Mary, to the SSAT question. If a family has already sent their scores to Catlin, is there anything they should do to pull them back, or any action they should take at this point?
Yes, no action is needed. We don't add them to the applicant's file, again, just to provide sort of equity among all of our applicants, but no worries about that. You don't need to do anything to take it back.
So this family is thinking about applying to the PALMA program, Mary, and their child excels in the pillars except for athletics. Do you have to participate in athletics, and you need to be excellent at athletics to be considered for PALMA?
Athletics is one of the 4 pillars, and so yes, you do need to participate in athletics, and you don't have to be like planning. You don't have to think that your child's going to be in the Olympics soon, or something like that. It doesn't have to be that crazy high of a level, but they do have to be a competitive athletes. Sometimes when I'm chatting with families, I will say, or if I'm chatting with the student, I'll say, when you think of like 5 things that kind of describe who you are right now, does an athlete, is that one of those 5 descriptors, or maybe one of those 10 descriptors, right? Like it's a sort of a mindset in terms of how much being an athlete or playing on a team sport or an individual sport is a part of your life, I would say.
That's a great way to phrase it. Mary, this next question is about the weight pool. This family's wondering, if you are placed into the weight pool, what are your chances of getting an offer of admission from the pool?
Yeah, every year, and I'll just speak for upper school because that's what I oversee. Every year we make some offers of admission from the weight pool. I can't remember a year that we haven't. What I think is hard sometimes for families is like, okay, well, when am I going to hear, right? And we really just make those offers when we hear of a family who maybe suddenly got a job transfer and they're not actually coming to Catlin after all, or returning to Catlin after all. So I've made offers truly from days after the first round of offers of admission go out, all the way through August. Which can be tricky for families who really want things settled, or perhaps you need to make a financial, a deposit at another school and those kinds of things. So what I would tell you is, if you want to be in the weight pool, you can respond, yes, I want to be in the weight pool, until you no longer want to be in the weight pool, right? Until you come up against maybe a deadline where you really feel like you need to make some other decision. And then you just let us know that you no longer want to be in the weight pool. The other thing I would happily encourage is for families who want to be in the wave pool, but are, perhaps thinking about, alternatives, you can check in with me. You don't have to do that in order to stay on my radar, but, I will happily welcome a call if you're like, we just got an offer of admission from X school. We really want to go to Catlin, tell me a little bit about sort of what, what the possibility is and things like that. So I'm happy to sort of have that conversation as well throughout the spring and summer.
Mary, once if you decide to come to Catlin in the 9th grade, how do you choose your classes? At what, how does that work?
Yeah, so if you sign on to come as a new student to Catlin in 9th grade, there'll be, we'll have a couple of events in the spring. We'll have an event to just where you can meet all the other new students and meet all the Catlin Gable 8th graders who are going to be 9th graders the following year. And that's just kind of a fun social activity. And then in addition, the upper school, some folks in the upper school will reach out to you and your family and set up a time for you to come in to talk about class registrations and so forth. So we take the initiative to reach out to you and set up a time and then they'll go over like what's required and where there are some options and so forth. And then once you're a student here, that just happens as part of being a student here.
Okay. Back to the PALMA program. What if you play a sport that Catlin doesn't offer and you still considered as a PALMA scholar?
Yeah, yep. That is considered a qualifying sport. So we over the years have had fencers, and Catlin doesn't offer fencing. We've had PALMA scholars who've played lacrosse. We have right now a scholar who is a competitive dancer, and we don't offer a dance program here. So yes, that is, we'd love it for all of our PALMA scholars to maybe in addition to playing the sport that they play outside of Catlin to also consider playing on one of our team sports as well, but it is not a requirement.
Thanks, Mary. And for a family who is considering applying for the 26-27 school year for the upper school, are there ways in which they can get to know Catlin this year beyond the house?
Yeah, absolutely. So all the steps that I outlined earlier are for families who are wanting to apply for the upcoming school year, right? So for the 25-26 school year. But families also just look further ahead. Maybe your child's in 7th grade and you want to start thinking about high school, right? So the open house is a fantastic event to go to. Everybody is welcome, whether you're interested in the upcoming year or further down the road. So that's I would say that's the best. And then that's a great event. And then the upper school information sessions or the PALMA program, the PALMA Scholars information session at the Multnomah Athletic Club. Any of our events like that are absolutely open to everybody and anybody who's interested. The things that we reserve for families who are wanting to or who are applying for the upcoming year or seriously considering applying for the upcoming year are the shadow days and the tours. And that's just to minimize sort of interruptions in the classrooms and so forth.
This next question is one about financial assistance, Mary. So it might be one that Mary Jakob wants to cover for us. The question is, what percentage of tuition can be covered by financial assistance? Family understands specifics, depends on the individual, but just wanting a rough understanding of what's the process and what's the range of what we cover.
Hi. So it is it's based on your calculated needs. So going through the application process online, and that calculation comes to me, it's verified, all of your income and all that information is verified. And then the calculation tells us, pretty much what your household can afford for tuition. And then we take that amount and distribute it over the number of kids in your household for whom you're paying tuition. And so if you have a child at Catlin, it could be, you know, that our tuition is higher than your other child, so we would prorate it based on that. But it is a calculated need, and then our goal is to cover up to 95% of that need. And overall, our average has been covering closer to 97-98% of need for families who apply for financial assistance and qualify and are admitted. So it's completely dependent on your level of need. But so if you, for example, your calculation says that your family can pay $12,000 for tuition, then we would try to cover that other 41,000 or whatever it is, or 31,000 for high school. So that's typically how it works. It's not a set amount. It's based on your need and covering a level of your need. Hopefully that makes sense and answers your question.
Thanks, Mary. And you're offering an information session on financial assistance, I think, later on.
Correct. I'll have 2 sessions going at Open House, and I will do a little bit of information and then have some time for questions.
Great.
So if you need more, come see me at Open House, but I also have Q&As weekly on Thursday mornings. You can pop in on me there, or see me in January for an all financial aid webinar.
Great. Thanks, Mary. Mary Brown, we have time for maybe 1, maybe 2 short questions. This is a family that's wondering about transfer students. So I think wondering about students coming into 10th, 11th, or 12th grades. Is that possible? About how many openings do we have on average?
Yeah, so since this webinar is recorded, if you missed the earlier part of this within the first probably 5 or so minutes, I shared a little bit of a chart in terms of the number of new students who come as new students for 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. So you get the 5-year average on the little chart earlier. But yes, the longer answer is yes, we do. We every year have a couple new 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. We don't have nearly as many as who comes in for 9th grade, but it isn't unusual for us to have new students coming into those grades. Yeah, I would say less than sort of 5 for most of those grades. Yeah.
Thanks, Mary. And last quick question is again back to the PAMA Scholars Program. Family wondering if it's just for sports, or are there other things that we consider?
Yeah, so, and before I forget, I will just again put a plug in for if you are able to come to the open house. I think it's might be the first session on the docket at 1:15 is a session for families who are interested in learning more about the PAMA Scholars Program. You'll get to meet the director of the program, Jonah Weaver. He'll have some current PAMA scholars there as well to speak about the program, and there'll be opportunities to ask questions there. So that's an awesome opportunity. And then we have the breakfast, as I mentioned, at the Multnomah Athletic Club. So similar in that you'll meet some scholars who are currently in the program and the director, and you get a lovely breakfast out of the deal. So consider that as well on December 3rd. And our website has a ton of information. So, but it is for incoming 9th graders, and there are 4 pillars in the program. One is athletics, one is academics, one is service, and one is leadership. And so when we look at applicants for the program, we look for sort of strength and strong potential in all 3 of those areas. And some of those pillars, it's a little bit easier to sort of demonstrate that as an 8th grader, and other ones a little bit trickier as an 8th grader. But we do look at sort of all 4 of those areas when we consider offering the scholarship to folks. And typically we offer the scholarship to, on average, about 4 students every year.
Thanks, Mary. I think that's all we have time for. So I'll turn it to you to wrap things up.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, colleagues, for your help. And thanks for those of you who joined the webinar. I appreciated your great questions. And if you think of questions after this goes away, I am very, very available to families over the phone. You can schedule a time to come in to chat with me. We can schedule a Zoom meeting. So please don't feel, and over email if you have questions. So please don't feel like this was your only opportunity to ask me questions. And with that, I will say thank you for joining us and hope you have a good rest of the day.